I'm just trying to cheat with notes. You can't cheat with notes. Got to sing them.
Mr. Sinatra, sir, are you ready for the reporters?
Send in the clowns.
Mr. Sinatra, Bruce Kerr of the Washington Post. In Kitty Kelly's book just published, she has you linked romantically with the former First Lady, Mrs. Reagan.
That's Nancy.
Yes, would you care to comment?
I find it all so amusing.
First of all, how do you feel about Miss Kelly's having published unauthorized biographies of both you and Mrs. Reagan?
Some people get their kicks stomping on a dream.
How does this make you feel about Miss Kelly personally?
This chick is a tramp.
But in her book, is she telling the truth?
Believe me, I've got a case on Nancy.
Now we're getting somewhere. About those lunches.
Don't you approve?
Then those lunches did happen.
Yes, there were times.
What happens?
She gets hungry.
Well, what would the First Lady wear at these lunches?
Picture a tomboy in lace.
What would transpire during these lunches?
I bit off more than I could chew.
How embarrassing. What would you do?
I ate it up and spit it out.
All right, Mr. Sinatra, about that picture of you dancing with Mrs. Reagan, with the president trying to cut in, did you
try to separate them?
Yes.
That's the beginning.
Something to it then?
Just one of the clues.
More behind it?
You're on the right track.
All right, but first, in Miss Kelly's book, you reportedly used to think of former President Ronald Reagan as, quote, dumb, dangerous, and simple-minded. Care to comment?
I've got to say no, no, no.
Well, then, how did you and Mr. Reagan meet?
Strangers in the night.
Oh, really? How did you get along?
We were so gay.
My goodness, even Kitty Kelly missed this.
Isn't it queer?
That's saying a mouthful. Now back to Mrs. Reagan. The book says you originally thought of her as, quote, a dope with fat ankles who could never make it as an actress.
Hold your horses.
Well, then, how did you and Mrs. Reagan get along?
Lovers at first sight.
Aha, so you did have an affair.
You are bringing me down.
We just want the truth, Mr. Sinatra.
Man, you brought me down.
I'm sorry, we just want to know.
Are we a pair?
Yes, or were you?
That's what all the people say.
Well, were you?
I know one thing.
Yes.
I just want to say.
Yes.
How little we know.
Mr. Sinatra. Okay, let's try again. What did you want from Mrs. Reagan?
Be her friend.
And when you visited the White House?
Could have cheated lots of times.
But did you?
Oh, no, not me.
Mr. Sinatra, did you and Mrs. Reagan ever go...
all the way?
Yes, all the way?
Let's keep that party polite.
The book says Mrs. Reagan followed the advice of astrologers to help run the country.
It's witchcraft.
In conclusion, Mr. Sinatra, how do you feel about Miss Kelly's book on Mrs. Reagan?
It isn't fair, and it's not nice.
And when Miss Kelly contacted you about this book, what did you tell her?
You're gonna hear from me.
And if you had it to do all over again...
Regrets, I've had a few.
Such as?
But then again, too few to mention.
Thanks a lot.
To think I did all that.
All what, Mr. Sinatra? What was it you did with Mrs. Reagan?
Did it